and gentlemen, what a start. Welcome to episode 1 of the Dog Pound Pod. Yes, this was supposed to be out August 30th. I had to change it. Had some stuff going on. And then also, this was hopefully going to be out earlier today. And I actually started filming this last night, but I'm not dog sitting, I'm house sitting for my boss, and they have a big house kind of in the woods, and I thought I heard something. And you know, when you're home like that, home alone, in a big empty house, and you hear something, it was probably just a deer or whatever, but instantly your mind thinks, hey, Michael Myers is knocking on the frickin' door. So, obviously it wasn't anything, but, I just decided I wasn't really in the mood or whatever to sit down for an hour and talk. So, regardless, I'm still hopefully going to have this out by midnight. YouTube, for those of you who do not know, when you upload a video on YouTube, it usually takes forever. For whatever reason, on my new computer here, it takes like double that time. So, who knows? I might start uploading it, and it might take till 5 in the morning to, get up. I don't know. But we're starting somewhere. So, with that being said, Dog Pound Pod. This is a Cleveland Browns podcast. Going to be talking everything Browns. In episode 1, which is, of course, this here episode, what you can expect is to hear about everything Browns training camp. We're going to talk about the stars. We're going to talk about what you'd like to see, what you don't like to see, talk about the offseason with free agency and the draft, talk about how we can learn from last season, moving into this season, and going forward. Now, before we actually get into the podcast itself, I am obviously on another podcast, formerly known as the Kick 6 podcast. Now, it is the D&D podcast. I am one half of the D. My name is Derek, and I co-host that with my friend Dylan. We are now moving that podcast to Fridays at noon Eastern Time. So I will have the link to that in the description below. I'd appreciate it if you all check that out as well. So, let's get into it. So, we're going to start off with training camp, just because that's the most recent major events that have gone on, I guess you could say. So, with training camp so far, it's been quite interesting. There's been a lot of positives. There's been a lot of negatives. But I can say this. I've watched every training camp, or every day of training camp that they've had live on camera. They've had some closed practices and whatnot, and that's fine. But I'm just saying from a visual standpoint, I've watched all of them that have been available. And early on, one thing I noticed is guys seem to be very anxious to play. And that's not surprising, but I think there's definitely a major difference between working out, between going through the playbook, looking at film, by yourself at home versus in some sort of a locker room with your guys. You can begin to get to know the new guys around you and, just get acquainted. Sometimes with locker rooms, you can't just go into it with, everything's work. And that's not a bad thing by any means. But you want to slowly get, sorry, ad popped up. I hate that. You want to slowly get used to the routine, coming to the building, going through what you need to go through. Obviously now, in this era with the testing and just getting used to all that. It's different from, like I said, even just the training. There was guys that had to build, I guess you could say redneck versions of bench presses and squat racks, and it was pretty entertaining to see. But, when you're focused and you want, especially after what happened last season, these guys, they're ready to win. They're sick of the same crap year after year. They're focused. And I seen that a lot. Because you've seen guys who, especially like Baker, and we'll talk more about Baker in depth later, but Baker walked in to training camp dead focused, in fantastic shape, and determined. The guy who's known to be the jokey, entertaining kind of guy, I guess you could say, came in very focused, very ready to go. He shut up. He shut up. And there was a lot of criticism of him this past season, as should have been. I mean, I think we can all admit things didn't go as well as hoped, but the focus is definitely there. You've seen with a lot of your stars, frankly. Austin Hooper came in day one, ready to go. OBJ came in lights out from day one. These guys are determined. They're not messing around this year. Last training camp early on versus what I've seen so far early on with this training camp, just talking about the early portions, we're going to get into the progressions and whatnot, but just early on, there's very major differences. Freddie Kitchens did not run a very well-organized practice, if you will, or camp, well-organized camp. It was a very hard-hitting, tough, and that all those things are fine, but Freddie Kitchens took it overboard. There was a lot of injuries. There was a lot of just unnecessary stuff. And I think it rubbed the guys the wrong way because Freddie Kitchens was one of these assistant coaches who was an entertainer. He wanted to have a good time with the guys and, just take care of his role, on the team. Whereas when he comes in as a head coach, he immediately came in like, all right, my team, I'm running it. We're going to be tough. We're going to be hard. And it's like, you can't do that. You can't have one versus the other. Make up your mind. Either you're going to be the tough guy or you're going to be the team-friendly, let's do it kind of coach. And with Kevin Stefanski so far, he seems like a very well-organized, well-run leader. There's a difference between guys, like a Bill Belichick, like an Andy Reid, not Sean McVay. I was going to say Sean McVay, Pete Carroll, those guys who have done it for a while, who, they have their way of doing things. Bill Belichick, even though this season we've seen something a little bit different with Cam Newton coming in and whatnot, the Patriots over the years have had a very well structured system there with practices, camps, film study, game, everything. Everything was very organized, very structured. Same thing with all the guys I named who've done it for a while. Once you find your way to win, that's what you're going to stick with. And Kevin Stefanski came in with a lot of pressure because there was a lot of Browns fans like myself who said, given the options that we had when it came down to Kevin Stefanski, obviously, and then I forgot his name, Patriots offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels. When it came down to those two, there was people like myself who said, you know what? Yes, Josh McDaniels failed the first time, but he's had a lot of time with Bill. He knows what it's like to win. He's seen a well-ran organization, and the culture is very strict, I guess you could say. You're not going to put up with any BS there in New England. So I was on the side of, you know what? Well, why not? Why not? There's definitely major bad things that could happen, but I preferred Josh McDaniels. And I was not happy at all when Kevin Stefanski was hired. In fact, I was very mad. I was very mad because, number one, I wanted Ron Rivera. I wanted Mike McCarthy. Those guys. And, when those options went off of the table, it's like, okay, now we're down to these two. I'd rather go with a guy who I think has learned, who has a very good reputation with his offense. I think I was wrong. I do. Obviously, you got to see how the season goes and whatnot. But so far, based on what I'm seeing, my worry with Kevin Stefanski was not that the offensive style and the X's and O's wouldn't be good. That I had no doubt in because Baker Mayfield, throughout his whole career, has succeeded at a high level with the play action, heavy run play action, quick plays, that style. And, that's what he succeeds at. And I knew coming from Minnesota that Kevin Stefanski has been well trained under that system, and then recently with Gary Kubiak. And there's a lot of people who say, well, what if it's just Gary Kubiak who had that success? Maybe it wasn't Kevin Stefanski. And to that I say, okay, I understand. But I see in Kevin Stefanski a guy who has grown up in one system, who has learned every step of the way from the lowest position up to offensive coordinator. He's been watching along the way, improving at every step throughout his career. And when you bring in a guy in Gary Kubiak who has had the experience that he has in the system at a high level, a guy who's won a Super Bowl with Denver, and who's been very successful everywhere else, there's no better person for him to learn from. And I think, even if it was Gary Kubiak who is to credit for the success in Minnesota, I think you're going to see a very close version of that from Kevin Stefanski. Because the difference between Freddie Kitchens and Kevin Stefanski is Freddie Kitchens' ego was so big that even though he knew the best way for success, he knew Baker Mayfield's strengths. The year before, when he took over as offensive coordinator, even though I believe it was Ken Zampese or whatever, quarterback's coach or whoever, was really pulling the strings behind the scenes. Freddie Kitchens has seen the system that Baker needed to be more successful. After Hugh Jackson and after Todd Haley was fired, you've seen that switch when they moved from, that first style using a similar playbook, because you don't want to just completely throw it out midway through the season, using a similar playbook and basically saying, okay, what do you want to run? What are you best at? Okay, let's do that. So even though that was not perfect, Freddie Kitchens knew the general style in which the offense needed to be ran. When he was hired as head coach of the Cleveland Browns, he took that and threw it in the trash and set it on fire. Not only did he know the proper system needed to succeed, because we got Odell Beckham Jr., paired him with Jarvis Landry, we can go down the entire offense. Everybody knows the weapons that we have. He thought that didn't matter, the system that the quarterback succeeds best in. He thought, okay, just because we added these weapons, he can just mold into any system. And that phrase, system quarterback, is often used as a very, maybe not offensive, but a very limiting term. There's people who have said Tom Brady's a system quarterback. If he wasn't with Bill, he can't succeed. Well, we'll see with that. I don't tend to agree with that, but system quarterback is not necessarily a terrible thing. It's about getting the best out of what you got. And Freddie Kitchens, even though he moved off of it a little bit, absolutely refused to give up play calling. He would not do it. Kevin Stefanski so far has come in and said, okay, this is what we're doing. We will be structured. We will be organized. We will be efficient. We're going to work, and we're going to do it in a way that is productive. Because you can go in, I can go in a weight room and, spend 3 hours just riding a bike on the lowest level of resistance. And, I'm sure that would do some good, but it's not going to do anything compared to if you actually used your time right and was more organized. So Kevin Stefanski has made that his focus point. And the worry of a lot of Browns fans was, who's going to call plays? Who's going to call plays? Freddie Kitchens wouldn't turn that over. Are you going to call plays? And he's basically been like, I don't know. We'll see. And what that tells me is Kevin Stefanski does not have an ego to the point where you can't tell him that he's wrong. Freddie Kitchens repeatedly in press conferences was asked, are you going to give it up? Are you going to give it up? Are you going to give it up? And he was dead set. And Kevin Stefanski, I really don't think cares. I think Kevin Stefanski is more worried about the success of the team than how people think of him. And I think if Freddie Kitchens would have turned over the play calling, he'd probably still be the head coach. So it might be a blessing in disguise. But so far, when you compare camps, Kevin Stefanski versus Freddie Kitchens, camp-wise, are two completely different things. And that's a fantastic thing to hear if you are a Browns fan. So, after almost 20 minutes now, let's actually get into training camp. So, the standouts so far have been Odell Beckham Jr., Austin Hooper, Kareem Hunt, Harrison Bryant on the offensive side, Kevin Johnson on the defensive side before he got hurt, Denzel Ward, trying to think, Miles has been out, Carl Joseph has looked very good, Grant Delpit looks good before he got hurt, Greedy's been hurt. I'm trying to think who else standout was. Taki and Mac before they got hurt. Before Mac got hurt, looked good. Taki has, for a guy who didn't play a lot, he's looked ready to go. So that's a good sign. Jacob Phillips looks really good. We can go down the list. But as far as standouts, there have been a lot. And it's been very promising. And with Baker, I've noticed that his footwork seems to be very different. Baker Mayfield, one of the misconceptions with Baker is that he's going to look like the typical NFL quarterback with his drop back. There's a lot of quarterbacks, the typical, not anymore necessarily, but, back in the days of your Peyton Mannings, and whatnot, the typical get the ball, drop back 4 or 5 steps, and throw it. Baker isn't like that. A 3-step drop turns into a 6-step drop because of his size. What he likes to do is, I wish I could pull it up and show everybody, because YouTube loves to, well, not YouTube, but the NFL will throw copyrights on anything. Baker takes a very wide step because of his size. So what that does is it allows him, when he's dropping back, when you're up in the center like that, and you have guys the size of these NFL offensive linemen, when you're dropping back, they get smaller the further back you go, and that allows him to, let me put this back, that allows him to see the field better with his drop back, and that's why he's done that like he has. Now, the better thing to do would be just get the ball out quicker. But last year, Baker was forced to hold on to the ball because of the play calling in the scheme, the design. And, this year, what I've seen from him is where those 3-step drops would be 5 and 6-step drops because of how deep of a drop he takes. And I know I did a bad job of explaining it. It's hard to explain when you're sitting down like this. But those drops he takes so far this year aren't that big drop. It's more of a quick step ball out. And I think that's going to be the focus point. Alex Van Pelt, from the day he was hired, said, I will fix his feet, because his feet was what was getting him in trouble, because he would sit back, he would drop back, and he would get caught in the situations where the line would collapse. So meanwhile, when he's dropping back to see the field better, the pocket's closing around him, and he has to bail to his right. He didn't trust his line, and that's why you've seen almost every other play, he was out to the right. Excuse me. And so that's what you repeatedly seen. This year, it seems like the play calling, and obviously it's going to revolve around the play action game, but I think we're going to pass the ball a little bit more than Minnesota did. I think, this might get a lot of heat for saying this, but I really think Baker Mayfield is the best play action quarterback in the NFL. His skill sets of the very Oklahoma quarterback style under Lincoln Riley, of the play design where who's going to be open and when, for the most part, and you can just get that ball out quick, sharp, and accurate. That's what Baker does best. Quick, sharp, accurate bullets, for the most part. And he does have the arm strength as well. So it's not like he's limited from an arm strength standpoint. And I see a lot of the same thing in Kyler Murray, and actually better in Kyler Murray. Throws a lot tighter spiral. I think Baker and Kyler are both very good in the accuracy and very good arm strength-wise. Jalen Hurts is a little bit different, but he's unique in his own way, if that makes sense. So, that looks good. That's very promising. Now, how does that switch to on the field? What I talked about with his dropbacks has been a lot better. You're starting to see that on the field, not just in the free 7-on-7s. You're seeing that in real game scrimmage situations, and it's worked well. Now, has it been perfect? No. I should have said, has it been perfect? No. But at the same time, there's major improvements made. His decision-making has gotten a lot better from the more quick standpoint. Get that ball out. And I think that's going to help a lot. I think you're going to see a major drop in the interceptions, and I think you're going to see a drop in sacks because I don't think he's going to be in a position to where he holds the ball a lot or too long when we do pass. So anyway, Baker, I've talked about that too long. So let's just go down the list. The offense has, I don't want to say struggled, because I don't think they have struggled. I think they're just getting acclimated. And, it's just one of those things that takes time. Now, in the most recent practice in First Energy Stadium with the game jerseys, which looked absolutely fantastic. To see those new jerseys, new uniforms on the field on these guys, they knocked it out of the park. Absolutely fantastic. So, in the most recent practice, you've seen the second-team offense with Case Keenum looked better than the first-team offense. And there's a lot of people who are, not a lot of people, but there's certainly some who are very anxious about it. And I'm not worried. Even though we're 2 weeks away, I'm not worried, because even though that second-team offense did look better, there were a lot of positives to take away from that practice. And one thing I noticed, and I made a video on this a while back, Jedrick Wills has concerned me a lot, talking about throughout camp so far. I was very happy when we drafted him because, I wanted Isaiah Simmons, but, he was off the board. So the next best option was Jedrick Wills, because, we didn't trade for Trent Williams, and out of the entire selection at line, or at tackle rather, if I knew what I was talking about, I really wanted either Jedrick Wills or Andrew Thomas. And, Mekhi Becton has a lot of potential, but I think I have major concerns about Mekhi Becton from a technique standpoint. Tristan Wirfs, I think, has a very promising future, but I have a lot of concerns when it comes to him adapting to the NFL. I don't know how much he will translate. Now, his athleticism is through the roof, but, he would have been my third option. But really, it was Jedrick Wills, Andrew Thomas, and then Tristan Wirfs. And I'm very happy that we did get Jedrick Wills. And my thing with Jedrick Wills, and the people who were concerned, well, he doesn't play left tackle, he plays right tackle, how's he going to switch? We need a left tackle. Take a breath. Jedrick Wills, to me, had the best footwork and the best technique. Now, from a size he wasn't the greatest. In fact, I was more concerned with his size after seeing him on the field in Cleveland. But the reason why I didn't have any concerns from his game was because his technique, his hands, and his feet were phenomenal in college. You've seen that at every step of the way. And normally those aspects in a offensive lineman, whether it be guard or tackle, translate from side to side. If your footwork is very good, and your technique with your hands is very good, normally you can translate. But you got to think, it'd be different if it was just, hey, we need you to switch over here for the time being. This is a long-term transition for him. This is something that he's not just going to have to get used to for the time being. He's going to have to get used to long-term, because he's going to be the left tackle long-term. You don't draft him at number 10 to play left tackle, not to start. So, he's going to have to get it down. Kevin Stefanski said that Jedrick Wills is the starting left tackle. He said, regardless of where he's at, he will be the starting left tackle. And I had a lot of concerns because I seen guys like Adrian Claiborne and Olivier Vernon repeatedly, and Port Augustin repeatedly beating him off of the line just in the team drills. And that's concerning to me because in a few weeks, 3-4 weeks at the time, he's going to be going up against, top-tier NFL defensive players. Matthew Judon is a guy who I really like, who I really respect, and I'm not taking him lightly. And I think they're going to throw him at Jedrick Wills hard week 1. And I won't be surprised if they throw Calais Campbell over there as well, just for the, that extra stress, I guess you could say. Because they know he's a rookie switching sides. They know he's not going to be at his best week 1. But talking about this latest practice, what I seen from him with all my concerns over camp, I watched him hold his own consistently. And, was it perfect every single play? No. But where I seen him struggle greatly against Olivier Vernon, Adrian Claiborne, it seemed like he had gotten it down. It seemed like the technique and the footwork had switched to where he was at least comfortable with it. It wasn't that he was trying to necessarily get acclimated to the position. It was more of he was just trying to not reinvent or not reapply his, what he knew. And it seemed for the most part like the progress went from here to here in that short time. And that is very, very, very encouraging to me, considering in 2 weeks he's going against the Baltimore Ravens, who have, a stacked defense. I'm encouraged. I'm very encouraged. And, to be fair, Nick Harris has been thrown into the fire with J.C. Treader out. I don't know how long J.C. Treader's going to be out. If somebody in the comment section wants to tell me, I can't remember how long they said, but out of nowhere, that comes out. J.C. Treader having surgery on his knee, I believe, and it's like, okay, thanks for telling us. So here comes the rookie out of Washington. And when you talk about being undersized, he's undersized. He's very undersized. But similar to Jedrick Wills, the athleticism and the technique are out of this world. And, at least with Nick Harris, he doesn't have to learn a new position. It'd be different if we were trying to throw him over to right guard. He has transitioned from college to the NFL, at least through practice, going against NFL talents, very, very well. I'm very impressed with this kid because he was a fourth, fifth, I don't know. Somewhere in there, I think he was a fifth round pick. And for him to be thrown into the fire like that, and to be able to hold his own as well as he did, he seems like he's going to be a perfect fit for this system. You don't need the big 10 feet tall giants in this system. You need guys who are going to be quick, athletic, and get the job done. You don't need people to, plow them over. You need them to just get in your way. So he seems to whoa, I don't know if you heard that. He seems to have acclimated to the NFL very well, and I'm happy. I'm happy with the progress that he's shown as a rookie and step up and fill a veteran's shoes. The center to the quarterback is more important than a lot of people think. It's all about timing. And so for him to have very little issues so far at all is very impressive to me. It's very impressive. So with the offensive line being as big a concern as it was last season, so far it looks like honestly, it looks like a strength, really. And, that's fantastic for, this season. So, long term, I think we're in a good place. But early on, I think Jedrick's still going to struggle. I think Nick, if he has to start, probably not going to do as good as hoped. But when you see the progress this soon, it's definitely really good signs for the things to come. So let's talk about some of these other rookies. Now, we talked about Jedrick Wills. We talked about Nick Harris. A guy who I really didn't think we needed. A guy who I really didn't know much about. I just seen a lot of the the comparisons between him and George Kittle, and I said, whoa, okay, I don't see that on film. I see a very good player, but, playing at FAU, I didn't know how well he would transfer. And I'm, of course, talking about Harrison Bryant. Harrison Bryant has been the most impressive player in camp. He has consistently, every single day, have pretty much catch everything thrown his way. I think I've seen him drop 2 balls the entire camp. He's catching everything his way. He's blocking at a high level. He's making crazy plays. It's not like he's wide open and he's just catching everything. He's making diving catches. He's having to go up and get the ball. Let me tell you what. David Njoku better figure it out quickly, because if I was in charge of the depth chart on this team, David Njoku's a third-string tight end. And there's a lot of people, if you're not a Browns fan and you're listening to this, you probably think I'm an idiot. Some Browns fans probably do think I'm an idiot. But when you look at David Njoku, you see a very big, very athletic, physical freak who does not catch the ball consistently, does not block at a high level. He's a name brand. Name brands are not always the greatest. Harrison Bryant is not the name brand pick. Harrison Bryant is the consistent pick. Sometimes the name brand stuff is the stuff that breaks first. So when you look at this offense, what are you looking for in your tight ends? You need a tight end who is going to be reliable, blocking, which David Njoku is not. Harrison Bryant so far has looked exceptional doing. And you're going to need a guy who's it's hard to even describe it. It's like you basically just need somebody who's reliable. And David Njoku is the opposite of reliable. He can make the big plays. He used to be able to make the big-time catches on fade routes in the end zone. This year, I have not seen that. I don't know if he's not fully healed from his wrist from last year. I really don't know. But what I do see is a guy who's pretty much lost his job. And Harrison Bryant has dominated every step of the way. He's the most impressive rookie in this draft so far. And when you're looking at the entire team and you're talking about who has made the biggest standout, it's Harrison Bryant. And it's not, I don't want to say it's not close, because not David Njoku, Austin Hooper has been the same way. Consistent, lights out, big plays. But the difference between Austin Hooper is, he's been in the league a while. He's a Pro Bowler. You expect that out of him. You don't expect that out of a fourth-round rookie tight end from FAU, And that's why it's such a big deal. And, I don't care where David Njoku was picked. I don't care how old he is. If you can't play, if you can't consistently perform, I'm playing the kid who can. And, that's just what I see. If you disagree with me, let me know. So, Donovan Peoples-Jones, DPJ, my guy. I am a diehard Ohio State fan. I was thrilled that we got Donovan Peoples-Jones. And the saddest thing to me was post that pick, there were so many Buckeye fans who happen to be Browns fans saying, oh my gosh, he sucks. Why didn't we take KJ Hill? All that. Donovan Peoples-Jones, coming out of high school, was the top-rated receiver in his class. You know who else was in that class? Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Marquise Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore. I'm trying to go down the line because I remember the list. Basically, everybody who was drafted high, Jerry Jeudy was a top pick. CeeDee Lamb was a top pick. Henry Ruggs was a top first-round pick. He was rated higher than all of them. So the potential is there. You don't just get rated that high if there's nothing there. So everybody who's saying that he sucks and he's terrible and he's not good, you have no clue what you're talking about. Michigan was a bad choice for him. It was a hometown school. I believe he's from Detroit, maybe, somewhere in Michigan. So he picked Michigan to stay home, and, I can't blame him because, if I wanted to play somewhere, I'd probably play at the school that I love to, and, it is what it is. But Donovan Peoples-Jones has everything you need to be a superstar receiver in this league. He's very athletic. He's very physical. He's big. He's built like Julio Jones, for Pete's sake. And I just sounded like I was 80 years old. But he's got everything you need. He just needs to be molded. He's got all this talent, and they didn't use it at Michigan. They had terrible coaching throughout his time there. The quarterback play has been beyond terrible. And, when you're a receiver, your quarterback, they don't have to be perfect, but they need to be competent. The quarterbacks that he had were not competent for the most part. And Shea Patterson was the best they've had there in a long time, and he was terrible. So I don't blame him for, how his college career turned out. But I will tell you this. If he went to Ohio State, if he went to Alabama, if he went to Georgia, LSU, name a school other than Michigan, odds are he's probably a third-round pick or higher. And if I wanted him before the draft even started. I had no clue where he was going to go. I figured that he would not be in the group of the top guys just because of the production he showed throughout college. Even though it wasn't awful, it wasn't where it should have been. So I thought, I don't know where he's going to get picked, but I would love to have this guy. And lo and behold, he drops to the 6th round. And frankly, if I was the GM, I would anywhere past the 3rd round, I would have considered taking him, just because of how valuable of a pick that could be. When you have somebody the talents that he has and the potential that he has, it's all on your coaching. Can you take that mold of clay, or can you take that clay and mold it into what it can be? And I think Donovan Peoples-Jones has absolutely got that ability to do so. So, Chad O'Shea, the wide receivers coach here in Cleveland, he's been given a fantastic player. And, between him, OBJ, and Jarvis Landry, I'm interested to see what a beast he turns out to be. Because, that's another thing that concerns me. Because throughout camp, outside of Jarvis and OBJ, Rashard Higgins has not lived up to what he was expected to be. I thought he had that third wide receiver spot locked up. And for whatever reason, he hasn't seemed like he once was. And that's probably because the idiot coach before Kevin didn't play him at all. And, it is what it is. So he hasn't looked the same. Kadarius Hodge has looked very promising. Excuse me. Taywan Taylor has looked pretty good. Ratley's been injured a lot. But, JoJo Natson, it's a room full of guys, and there's more. It's a room full of guys who have a lot of potential. And my worry is that they will not look at long-term versus immediate future. And if it were me, I think that Donovan Peoples-Jones should be the third or fourth receiver on the depth chart. And really, it's probably OBJ, Jarvis Landry, Kadarius Hodge, DPJ, and Rashard Higgins, honestly. I don't know how many receivers they'll keep just because of the system doesn't use a lot of receivers. But we'll see how that turns out. But I tell you what, they better not cut him. They better not even think about cutting him because the potential in what you have is way too big to let walk out the door. And I don't care how good JoJo Natson is at, in the return game, DPJ can do a good level. Like, I'm not even saying he has to be an elite level returner. He can do a good enough job to, maintain that position as well as improve as a wide receiver specifically. So, and then with Jacob Phillips, it was, it was a pick that immediately I said, wish we would have took Malik Harrison. But now when you take a step back and look at it, Jacob Phillips led the team in tackling at LSU with a defense that was full of studs. The Browns had major tackling issues last season, and, he's a guy who has a lot of promise, who I think if he would have stayed another year, I forget what year he came out. I think he had another year of eligibility, but he probably could have made a bigger name for himself. I think just because that defense was so stacked, you have Stingley, Delpit, Queen, Lawrence, Kaylavon Chasen. There's so many good players on that defense. So for him to lead that team in tackling, while have his name not be the big star of the team necessarily, it tells me that he's more of a production guy than a name value guy. And I'd rather have the production, just like I said with Harrison Bryant. So with Mack Wilson out, now it seems that he's only going to be out about 4 weeks. So 4 more weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. I don't know. Anyway, instead of missing the entire season, he's going to be back. Is basically what that means. So, that's good to hear, but Jacob Phillips has been playing at a very high level. Now, we went out and got B.J. Goodson in the offseason, who, I wasn't really high on, but so far recently, not early on in camp, but recently, he's been very, very good. And we signed Malcolm Smith, who is a former Super Bowl MVP, who's bounced around a little bit, but when it comes to filling the hole of Mack Wilson, Malcolm Smith is a guy who seems like he's very similar. Now, he's nowhere near the talent of Mack Wilson, but Malcolm Smith is a very hard-hitting, good in coverage linebacker, and that's pretty much what Mack Wilson is. So with Grant Delpit, it's sad because I loved Grant Delpit. I think long run, people are going to look back and say, how was he not a first-round safety or a first-round pick? And he was having a very good camp. He was looking very promising. I didn't have any doubts anyway, but, he has it. Okay, he has it. And, people were concerned with his last year at LSU. He played through an injury, and that's just what it is. That's a culture there. If he didn't have that injury, if you're just going off of the year before, he would have been a top first-round pick. And I think, because the expectations were as high as they were, even though he didn't play at that level, he still got the, what is it? Is it the Jim Thorpe Award? Or am I confusing that? I don't know. But anyway, he got the nation's best safety in college football. So even though that was more off of name value, I think, or the nation's best DB, I don't know. Anyway, I think this is a player who's got a very bright future. And I thought he was going to be able to come in day one, start at free safety, and play at an elite level. I thought this was a guy who could come in as a rookie and make it to the Pro Bowl. I really did. I thought that's, I had that high of hopes for him. And now that he's out for the season, it's frustrating because now you look at your options. Logan Ryan's off the table. I don't want to bring in Earl Thomas. I think that's a bad idea to bring in Earl Thomas, just because of what we talked about earlier with the culture standpoint. You're fixing the culture, you're fixing the locker room, and so far that seems to be going very well, but you can't have guys like Earl Thomas who come in and just think they can do whatever they want. People love to say that about OBJ. I don't think he was that big of a problem, as a lot of people do, but there have been vast improvements, and that's clear to see, and you don't want to bring this bull in to a china shop and just wreck through everything, and I think that's what bringing in Earl Thomas would do, and even though there is a reward with the risk there, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it at all. So, is there a trade to be made? Maybe. I don't hate our safety room. I think that Carl Joseph is a great player. Andrew Sandejo is a very good player. Sheldrick Redwine, I'm not super high on. But I do think there is something there with him. I don't think he's just flat out terrible like some people do. So I think there is something there with him. I just think he's a guy he's not ready by any means to start. So we'll see what goes on there. I have confidence in Andrew Berry. I really, really hoped that Logan Ryan would get signed here, but he went to the Giants. And, of course, the Giants got Xavier McKinney, and he went down with a broken ankle, I believe, or something. So the injuries have been crazy. And for the Browns specifically, you had, Myles Garrett tweaked his hamstring or whatever. Nick Chubb got a concussion. Mack Wilson hyperextends his knee. Grant Delpit's out for the season with the torn ACL. Or not. Is that right? No. Did I say that right? Whatever. Anyway, he's out for the season. Then you had Kevin Johnson with the lacerated liver. I'm trying to think. There's somebody else I'm missing. But anyway, Greedy Williams. Greedy Williams was hurt. So the injuries have been insane. Insane. And, I really think that it's a cause of not getting back in the building, arguing over protocols, arguing over everything. And I'm not saying that's not important. In this age we live in, everything has to be run a certain way with certain precautionary, tasks or steps. And, I get it. But at the same time, these guys you can't just come into the building on day one and start hitting each other. Your bodies have to get used to that. And I don't know. I think they made a big mistake not coming in sooner, but, we'll see. And I think the injuries have shown around the league. Derwin James just got hurt for the season, so it's incredibly sad. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. This has kind of been me just rambling, but overall, with the additions made, you had John Dorsey come in and lay the groundwork. He brought in a quarterback, your franchise quarterback, franchise running back, trades for a star receiver, 2 star receivers. Defensively, he got Demarius Randall at the time, Denzel Ward, Sheldrick Richardson. John Dorsey kind of got the big pieces. Andrew Berry comes in and fills the holes. Right tackle, left tackle, more depth at center, linebacker, defensive tackle. And I forgot to talk about Jordan Elliott, but he's also been doing great. So Andrew Berry has filled the holes, whereas John Dorsey has brought in the big pieces. So I think we're set for success. I do think we're going to, I don't know. I don't know how week 1's going to go, because I also heard Lamar Jackson went like 8 for 18 with 2 interceptions in their scrimmage or whatever. So, they might be struggling too. Maybe Lamar Jackson passing issues that I've been constantly saying are, starting to show themselves. So, it is what it is. I just hope at this point that everything can run smooth and we can continue to have a season with no issues, that you don't have to constantly stop and start and stop, and it's going to be an interesting year, but it's it is what it is. There's only so much you can do. So trying to think what I didn't talk about. I think for the most part we hit everything for episode 1 here. I know this might have been kind of boring. It might have been too long or whatever. I'm probably going to do one of these about every other week, just because of, everything going on. Once the season starts, I'll probably do a shorter one every week to recap the Browns game. So other than this podcast here, episode 1 of the Dog Pound Pod is officially finished. I thank you all for joining me. Let me know your thoughts, what I can improve on. I'm going to try to have more of a structured deal here. So, as I said earlier, go check out the now called D&D podcast, formerly known as the Kick 6 podcast. That's going to be every Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. I think I said that right. I don't know. We'll see. So, anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you watched all the way to the end, you're fantastic. Like I said, let me know your thoughts, and we will see you in the next episode, probably every other week. So, thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.